Hi, you guys. We're going to start on 6-2. And 6-2, I'm going to break into 2 different days just because this one can be a little more challenging than the graphing, typically speaking. But I think you guys will do great with it. So here's what you're going to do, okay? Your goal in this process of solving by substitution, okay? So we're going to do substitution, is to isolate one variable. That means get a variable by itself, right? We've used isolate over and over and over again this year. Get a variable alone, okay? So what you need to think when dealing with substitution, maybe it's helpful to you to think of like basketball. If you take out a point guard, you want to put a point guard in, or maybe you're a musical person. You could take a half rest out and you could put 2 quarter rests in and they have the same value, okay? So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to take something out and put something that is equal to it in its place that will help us to solve the problem, okay? So we're going to do some substitution. This first one, it says, what is the solution of the system? Use substitution. Now, what I said is your goal is to isolate a variable. Well, if you look at your 2 equations here, equation 1, equation 2, you have to ask yourself the question, are any of my variables isolated? And if you look at this first equation, let me pick a different color here. So if we look at this equation, my y is by itself. So my y has been isolated. So what I'm going to do is I know that y is the same as 3x. Okay, so anywhere I see a y, I can put in a 3x because I know they're equal to each other. So what's going to happen is I'm going to take this 3x and I'm going to put it in place of this y. Because if y is actually equal to 3x, then I can take the y out, put the 3x in, and solve, and now I only have one variable. So if you look at it this way, I'm just going to rewrite this equation. X plus the 3x that we're going to substitute equals negative 32. Okay, so when we started, this had 2 variables, x and y, and we can't solve that. But because this equation says that y is equal to 3x, I can put that 3x in place of my y, and now I can solve it because now it only has x's. So if I solve this equation now, x plus 3x is 4x equals negative 32, and then I'm going to divide by 4. So I get x equals negative 8. Okay, that's part of my answer. That's not the whole answer. Your solution, just like when we did graphing, right? When we graphed it, our solution was a point, an x value and a y value. It's the same thing for today. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that x value, that negative 8, and we're going to plug it back into one of our first equations. And the easiest one to plug it into is this one. Because we know y is equal to 3x, we can plug in a negative 8 for that x. So 3 times negative 8. So y equals a negative 24. Okay, so my x value is negative 8. My y value is negative 24. And that is my answer. Okay, so let me just talk you through it one more time. First thing we did was we made sure something was isolated. Now, we didn't have to do anything. It was already isolated. Then what we did was we substituted 2 things of equal value. And then once we substitute, then we can solve our first equation. Okay, so that's what we did to get x equals negative 8. And then we're going to plug in the solution to get the other point. So that's what we're doing here. Okay, that's substitution. Let's try it again on this second one. Okay, for this one, 2 equations. Y equals 2x plus 7 and y equals x minus 1. Is there an isolated variable? The answer is yes, right? There's actually two. They're both isolated. This y is by itself, and this y is by itself. So you may think of this either way, but what happens is I know what y equals. I know that y is the same as 2x plus 7. So I can go down to this equation, take out the y, put in the 2x plus 7, and I have a new equation. Now my equation looks like this. 2x plus 7 equals, and now we're just finishing off this equation, x minus 1, right? If this is equal to y, then we can replace the y with that, okay? Okay, so now if this is my equation, we're just going to solve for x. So I'm just going to rewrite it here so you don't have a mess. 2x plus 7 equals x minus 1. We're going to take an x away on both sides of our equal sign. So this goes away. This is just x now. So it's x plus 7 equals negative 1. And now we're going to subtract 7. Got a negative 8 again. Okay, so x equals negative 8 is our first thing. So that tells us what x is equal to. We want to know what y is equal to, so I'm just going to get rid of this scribble here. You can plug this x into either one of your equations. I would probably plug it into the bottom one, just because it's a little simpler. So it would be y equals negative 8 minus 1. So y is negative 9. Okay, that means my answer is the point negative 8, because that's my x value, negative 9, because that's my y value. So this is my answer. Okay, so you need to isolate a variable, which so far that's been done for us. Then you need to substitute for that variable, and then you need to solve. Okay. Okay, so that's as basic as they get with these. Here's where they get a little bit fancier. Okay, now if you look at your two equations, you have a black one and a red one there for letter A. Okay, I'm looking here. Do you have an isolated variable? You do not, right? You don't have a variable that's by itself. So your job is to pick which one would be easiest to isolate. And if there's no coefficient, if there's no number in front of it, that's going to be the easiest one to get by itself. So ask yourself the question, how do I get y by itself? What I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2x to both sides. And now my new equation is y equals 2x minus 3. Okay, so now we have y by itself. Now it's our job to substitute. So we're going to take this 2x minus 3, and we're going to plug it in where we see a y. Well, we're not going to do it in this bottom equation because that's where we took it from. So you can't plug it back into the equation you already changed. You need to plug it into the other equation. So if you look here, our y value is right there. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. It's 3 times y, and y is this whole thing. So you have to keep the parentheses and rewrite it. So I'm going to write it like this, 3. And now we substitute parentheses 2x minus 3, right? That's y. That took the place of this y. And now go back here and finish off the equation. Plus 4x equals 14. Okay, now we distribute to solve this. So now we're just solving for x. 6x minus 9 plus 4x equals 14. Okay, 6x plus 4x is 10x minus 9 equals 14. We're going to add the 9. Should have written smaller. Sorry, I should have zoomed in for you. So we get 10x equals 23, and then we divide by 10. So x is 2.3. Okay, so we know our x value. Now we're going to plug it back in, and you can actually plug it into the one that you changed. That's probably the easiest one, as long as you changed it correctly. Okay, I would plug it in there. So we're saying y equals 2 times our x value, which is 2.3, minus 3. Okay, so that comes out to 4.6 minus 3, which is 1.6 for my y value. So my answer is the point 2.3, 1.6. So this is my answer. Okay. Okay, let's try another one. This one. First thing you should ask yourself is there an isolated variable? And with this one there is. Y is by itself, right here. So we know what y equals. Y is that value. We're going to plug that in for the y in the other problem, right? Take out a y, put in what we know it equals. So I'm just going to drop this 2x in right in place of this y. So it's going to be x plus 2 times 2x equals 5. Okay, now we simplify. 2 times 2x is 4x, so it's x plus 4x equals 5. 1x plus 4x is 5x equals 5, and then we divide by 5, so x is 1. Okay, so now we have our x value. Now you're going to go back up to your two starting equations and pick one to plug it into. You can plug it in here, or you can plug it in here. That top one is way easier if you just plug it in there. So it would be y equals 2 times 1. So our y value is 2, which means your answer is the point 1, 2. That's your answer. Okay. So that's what we're doing today, 6-2A. I know this isn't always the easiest concept, so if this one's a struggle for you, 2 things. Reach out to me, 1. We will be doing a live Zoom session before you take this quiz, so we'll go over questions that way. But you can also just email me and let me know what questions you have, and then I can make sure I cover it in the Zoom session. But yeah, don't hesitate to ask for help. Or if that means I need to record another quick video of me going over a couple of the homework problems, we can do that too. So ask for help. Let me know what you have questions on.